Hello and welcome to this series of lectures on learning the best practices of Java in the form of the effective Java. This is one of my book review series that we really dive deep into the contents of this effective Java book. And what is effective Java? So effective Java is a book written by Joshua Block. He's one of the old timers of Java. He's been with Java from the early on. And then the second edition covers best practices of Java 8. The third edition covers the best practices of Java 9. And this is just a picture of the front page of the book. So effective Java, the third edition updated for Java 9, including the modular, writing your Java application in a modular way, because Java 9 introduced the modular system or module systems in Java, which is more meant to be for more better encapsulation of the internals of your application. Some packages that you want them to be public, you can encapsulate them as a module. And now, in addition to the class path for Java virtual machine, we also have the concept of module path, right? So you can put a jar file, for example, on your class path or a module path. All right, so this book, Effective Java, is written in an item-based system, which means we have 11 chapters in the third edition, right? So 11 chapters, 90 items in total, and each chapter has several items, and each chapter mainly focuses on a specific topic in terms of Java programming. Chapter 1, creating and destroying objects, which includes in items 1 through 9. Chapter 2, methods common to all objects, and this includes items 10 through 14. Chapter 3, classes and interfaces. This includes items 15 through 25. Chapter 4, generics. This includes items 26 through 33. Chapter 5, enums and annotations. This includes items 34 to 41. And so enums, if you are familiar with Java, you know that enums are full-blown classes, so they can have constructors. The constructors are always private. Annotations are a feature of the Java which are typically not much discussed, because they usually are for the compiler, or you add additional information for the compiler. One of the annotations that almost everyone is familiar with is the override annotation. When you subclass and you try to override a method from the superclass, if you use an IDE like Eclipse, it automatically adds the override annotation, and that's just a hint to the compiler that, hey, my goal was to override a method from the superclass, and compiler at the compile time can check if there is actually a method with the same name in the superclass. If not, it gives a compilation error, not a warning, error, which means that you've made a typo or something in the name of the method that you are overriding. Chapter 6, lambdas and streams, and obviously these were introduced first in Java 8 and then were enhanced in Java 9 and later. Lambdas and streams. Lambdas are more about functions or functional interfaces. These are basically these are our functions that are backed by an interface. That's the main meaning of lambdas in Java. Streams are basically some sort of functional programming style in Java, and you probably already know that streams are lazily evaluated. Streams doesn't do anything unless a terminal operation is called on the stream. And this chapter includes items 42 through 48. Chapter 7, methods. So this chapter dives deep into the methods and best practices for the methods in Java classes. Note that in Java we don't really have any standalone function, so every function has to be encapsulated inside some sort of class. So the method can be a static method, a non-static method, private method, public method, protected method, etc. So there are a lot of access modifiers that define who can access what method, right? And then this chapter 7, includes items 49 through 56. Chapter 8, general programming. So this chapter is more about best practices in terms of general concepts, something that everyone probably encounter at some point in their Java programming So chapter 8, general programming, it's items 57 through 68. Chapter 9, exceptions, and exceptions are also very important topics, and I believe Java has the best way in terms of dealing with exceptions. Obviously, sometimes it's very annoying to some people using Java and checked exceptions, because Java compiler forces you to either handle the exceptions when you write the code or throw them out of the method. Then you end up with dealing with either you have to handle the exception then in the other method that called this method that has the exception, or you have to throw it also out of the other methods. And so throwing exceptions, especially checked exceptions in Java, is a little bit annoying, but luckily IDEs help us a lot in terms of creating the code for us, so we don't really need to worry about that. So chapter 9, exceptions, items 69 through 77. Chapter 10, concurrency and writing multi-threaded and concurrent applications, items 78 through 84. Chapter 11, serialization, and this is items 85 through 90. And admittedly, serialization was a bad idea in Java, or the way that it was implemented was a bad idea. So in the later versions of JVM or Java, they're trying to kind of fix this serialization to make Java or JVM more secure. Serialization has some issues. For example, if you have a singleton class, it can be serialized and deserialized, and then whenever you deserialize, the JVM actually creates another instance. Then you end up with two instances. There are ways to prevent that from happening. So even if you serialize and deserialize a singleton, you will still get the same instance of the singleton in the JVM. And we might get a chance to discuss that. So serialization, chapter 11, items 85 through 90, right? So I believe the most important chapter is obviously chapter 1, because that's the entry point to your Java application, Java programming, right? You have to be able to create classes. Everything starts with classes, right? And then the other one is methods. You have to do stuff with your classes that you create. So knowing the best practice of how to implement methods, how to give access to classes, how to determine what access modifier to use for methods. I believe this is very important. So for this course, obviously I'm going to use Eclipse IDE. I'm a regular user of the Eclipse IDE, and you can always go to Google, your search engine, and download the latest version of Eclipse IDE. And you go to the download page, and you can either download this Eclipse download manager, so it automatically takes care of regularly updating your Eclipse, or you can go to download packages and download one of the pre-configured packages. For example, Eclipse for C++ developers, this by default comes with the CDT environment, but you can also download the bare bone Eclipse for Java developers, and then for example add this C++ environment as a plugin. All of these configuration can be added later on as a plugin, and this is one of the nice things about Eclipse. It's a very modular basically development environment. And I believe in the latest version of Eclipse, it automatically comes with a JRE. You don't really need to have a JDK installed, so it does come with a Java runtime, and then you just fire up Eclipse and then write your Java application, and you can immediately run it. You don't need to have a pre-installed JDK. Obviously, I always recommend you install all the JDK versions, JDK 8, 9, 10, 11. And for example, on my Mac OS, I have installed a couple of JDKs, and then if I try to basically go to a folder, library, Java virtual machines on my Mac OS, I have installed JDK 8, JDK 16, 15, 14. This is an experimental JDK that has the inline classes feature, so I was trying to play with these inline classes. JDK 11, I have it installed. Graal VM, Java 11, adopt OpenJDK 16 from OpenJ9. This is from the IBM JDK, and 15. And the reason I installed these two from OpenJ9 was to compare the performance with the Oracle JDK. So it's also you can also download the Open JDK or Open J9 versions and compare them directly with the Oracle version. So that's it for this lecture. From the next lecture, we're going to dive into the chapters of the effective Java and go through each item and look at the details, what it means, and how to use those items in everyday programming with Java. Please stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.